Hello guys, and welcome to another vlog. So in this week's video, I'm going to discuss with you the 6 lessons that I learned the hard way by having the 2 businesses that didn't go quite the way that I wanted them to. This isn't a how-to guide or a how-to video, it is just my own personal business experience that I want to share with you in the hope that you can take something away from the lessons that I learned and implement them into your journey or indeed into your business. So excuse me if I keep looking down. As always, I have my notes here to keep us on track with the video. So lesson number 1 then, work smart, not just hard. So what do I mean when I say that? Well, I can remember a time at the very beginning of the business where I had the cookery school running alongside the deli business, while still working in a paid full-time employed role. Now that was difficult. It wasn't anywhere near working smartly. I just worked extremely hard and I got to the point, I think, where I was burnt out. So keep an eye on that. If you are on the journey where you're transitioning from paid employment into a business or a side hustle you've developed is now starting to take off and replace the income that you are earning within your paid employment, then indeed you are going to have a period of time where there is an overlap between paid employment and working within your business. And that can be tough. So that period there, think about smart ways of working. So for example, some of the lessons that I learned, if I was to do it again, some of the things that I would instill is making use more of technology. So is there any technological advancements in business that you can bring in to manage certain aspects of the business to take that pressure away from you? And also having staff, having teams of staff around you, having people to support you is a good way of being able to take that pressure off you as you transition into that role. Now, granted, taking on staff I appreciate is only valid in some business settings, and it is difficult. Obviously, the business needs to be making enough money to be able to cover your costs and also to be able to pay staff salaries. So think about if you are starting on the journey in that transition period, or if you are wanting to run a side hustle or a business alongside a paid employed role, then think about how you can bring smarter sort of business aspects into it. One big lesson I did learn, and I learned it quite hard and quite quickly, was using advanced accounting technology. So digital accounting technology took away a lot of information and having to sit there and manually sort of look after accounts and write accounts and things like that. So look for the smart ways of working so that it takes away some of that pressure on you as the business owner. So the second one then, know your audience before you build your business. Now this is probably one of the biggest lessons that I'm going to share with you within this video today. That was probably one piece of research that I failed to do well enough when I started the cookery school. Now, obviously, we did do some research into the customers that were around us in the local area and the competitor analysis, but I don't think we quite knew our audience needs well enough before we launched. I think that journey happened after we launched, so it was a little bit like firefighting. We were building the business in the background. We were putting all of those kind of foundations into the business and then having to evolve those foundations and plans as we got to know our customers and our audience needs more and more. So that became a difficult part of the business to manage, having to understand ways and protocols of being able to collect that information. And it's always easier to put plans in place when you're not in the business, or when the business isn't reliant on those plans and you understand your audience needs beforehand. So, that's a good example of a lesson that I did learn the hard way. I suppose the best piece of advice I can give there to you is to go out and speak to the general public. There are lots of tools now, digital tools that we can use, which allow us to capture the advice, if you like, and guidance from customers and what their needs are. There are lots of pieces of equipment out there, such as Google Forms or MailChimp. If you were to set up a mailing system, that gives you kind of hard and fast information back from customers on their needs and their preferences, which then would help you build your business around solving those problems and those customer needs. So lesson number 3, then we're going to talk about money. So cash flow first and passion second. Now this one was quite a difficult lesson that I learned towards probably the end of the business. So the latter 12 to 18 months before we closed. Cash flow is king. You'll hear that term being said by many business people, entrepreneurs, in business advice books, that cash flow is king. And it is very true. You need that passion, obviously, to build a business, to understand the customer needs, to be able to build those foundations and to grow it, but make sure that you've got that cash flow in place. So if you're going into your business alone, as a solo entrepreneur, make sure that you've got at least 12 months worth of salary and savings to cover any sort of costs that you have, and also a little bit of surplus alongside that if anything was to go wrong. So that covers you personally, but also then so that's personal cash flow. Also then thinking about business cash flow, try to make sure that you've got at least 6 months worth of savings that you can invest into the business away from your personal cash flow, which would then allow you to cover any outgoings, if there's any stock costs, any premises costs, insurances and things like that, that you're able to comfortably cover them with your personal money until the company is able to start washing its own face and paying those bills, and then also paying you that money back. So keep an eye on cash flow. It is really, really important. And the one kind of single piece of advice that I can give you there that carries the most weight in this is do your cash flow analysis. So look at planning your cash flow forecasting for at least 3 years. I mean, some institutions and banks may say to you they'd like to see 5 years. I think 3 years is a good starting point, and have it on a breakdown of a 12-monthly basis. So you're able to look at it year on year, short term. So you've got those short term goals, but as a whole document or a whole tool, you need to have that 36-month or 3-year outlook on there. And make sure that cash flow statement obviously is realistic. It fits in with your knowledge of your audience, which we've just spoken about, lesson number 2 there. Make sure that it fits in with what they need, and that you've done that kind of competitor analysis in the local area as well. Make sure that all of that is bought in. Make sure that your pricing strategy is realistic for the area, but also that it covers all costs with your gross profit markup, so that you do have an actual profit margin, and that all of your costs are included. And also, it's really important to put aside and think about those kind of rainy day funds as well. So make sure in your cash flow forecast that there is that element of having that extra income alongside, whether it is a business savings account, or whether it's put in on, certainly if you're a product-based business or a service-based business, you could put an extra percentage on the selling price of a service to allow you to have that kind of rainy day factor, that little bit of extra money on the side, which will help you, if things do get a bit tough. So that's lesson number 3 then. So next on to lesson number 4, knowing when to pivot and understanding that that's a strength and not a weakness. Giving up on something, or understanding when that moment comes that actually, do you know what, something isn't working in this business, and you've got the strength to see that and recognize that and discuss it, please don't see that as a weakness. It is indeed a strength, being able to look at your business objectively, subjectively, and understanding that something isn't quite right. Now, hopefully, if you keep that mindset within the business from day one all the way through, you should be able to tackle the problems quite soon on and be able to nip them in the bud and not leave them as late as I did. When I got to the point of pivoting, we were 3 years in, and the problems were at least 18, had been going on for at least 18 months. So I was probably quite late realizing when it was time to pivot and change things and potentially move on. So it was a hard lesson that I learned, really. And at the time, I did see, when we were closing the businesses, I did see it as a little bit of a weakness. And now looking back, having had the time to look at it in hindsight and do some more of the research, I now see it as, actually, do you know what? It wasn't a weakness, it was a strength, because we couldn't carry on like we were. The business wasn't making enough money to cover its costs, and it wasn't paying me anything. So I couldn't carry on as I was. And it was, looking back now, it was definitely a strength, because had I have carried on, we would have hit that brick wall really hard. And the journey that I've been on since coming out of the business has been, a tremendous journey, which has allowed me to develop myself personally within business circles, and has definitely improved my business acumen. So please do see that pivot point in your business as a strength, and use it as a strength mindset in order to move the business along, and understanding when something isn't right, that is, at times a good thing, and, trust the process and go with it. So lesson number 5 then, this is one that was a difficult one for me to learn, and it took me a long time to understand it. Don't try to do everything alone. Now, when I started my businesses, I wasn't the greatest delegator, probably wasn't the greatest communicator, and I wanted to make sure that I oversaw everything in the business, which is natural, because when I started, I worked alone. I was a solo entrepreneur. I did have family members that came in and out of the business to support me on an as and when needed basis, but predominantly the business was in my name, and I ran it day to day. So looking back now with hindsight and experience and better knowledge and research, I wouldn't go into that type of business again on my own. I would definitely have a second director to join me, because I think there is definitely power in numbers. Having a second person as a sounding board, having a partner who understands the business, who understands the quality of the services that you're trying to deliver, and understands the message you're trying to get across, and somebody who has that kind of business and financial acumen, I think is really strong. So having people around you is definitely a skill. Now, granted, if we're talking about employing staff, things like that cost money. And I understand that, startups at the very start of their journey find it difficult to have enough money to cover everything and employ staff. So possibly if you're at the stage now where you're looking at taking on another director or having a business partner, that's probably a good starting point from this lesson, so that you're not alone. And also, by not being alone, it improves, I think, the whole outlook of the business. It improves your mental health and well-being. Having somebody alongside you on that journey with you does indeed make you stronger. It kind of helps you to pivot as a person. It underpins everything that you're trying to do, so long as you choose the right person. and that person shares the same passion as you within the business and understands it through and through. So that's a challenge, really, in finding the right person and finding the person who is going to share that with you, potentially for voluntarily or for a small wage for a period of time at the beginning. And that's why it's really key when you do that piece of research and you find those right people. It is finding those right people and finding those people with those skill sets. So that brings me now on to my sixth and final lesson. So I apologize for looking down. I'm using my notes here to keep us on track. Now, this is probably the most important lesson within this video today. And as you know, I'm quite an advocate of mental health in business and positivity and that kind of strategic thinking. So protect your mindset like it's one of your business assets. I can't stress that enough. With all certainty, I did not do this. For many years at the start of my business journey, I did not protect my mindset whatsoever. I threw myself into the businesses while still working full time, and I think I did hit a brick wall. I experienced symptoms of burnout. I experienced kind of symptoms of bad mental health, and it wasn't great. So make sure that you have looked into all aspects of what sort of pressure whatever business you're looking at is going to have on your mindset, and make sure that you have that support network around you. So we kind of overlap here between lesson 5 and lesson 6 about having people around you and not doing it alone. So if you are looking for another director to join you or certain members of staff, make sure that those people have the qualities and maybe some ability to support you on that mindset journey, because you do go through quite a journey. You go through a growth mindset phase, but you also go through quite a difficult, dark phase if businesses experience challenges and tough times. It is hard to kind of muster that energy and take all of that on yourself. So how I now deal with it, having looked upon my journey and having made many changes to the way that I manage my mental health, is if you can access some counseling support. There are lots of good organizations out there that can support you on the journey of entrepreneurialism. And sometimes it's quite nice to have that break away from the business. So having somebody to talk to on the outside sometimes really helps, because they're coming from a neutral kind of point of view and they're looking at things from a neutral space. So do access those support services that are around you. If you are taking on another director, lean upon them, and vice versa. The other director can lean upon you and support each other with a mindset. But write in the mindset almost as a business asset in your business plan. Have it there alongside your financial projections to make sure that you have a assistance program, that you have enough money to cover things like that, to protect your mindset if you do need to access specialist support services later on down the line. Make sure that the finances are there to cover that, so that you have that support. And research the organizations that are out there. You've got the FSB, which supports small businesses here in the UK. And there are lots of really good support groups on Facebook that are available to you, that support you as solo directors or small boards of directors. So do your research before you start. Make sure that you write your the protective aspect of your mindset into your business planning, and make sure that you've got the finances there in place for an assistance program if it is needed later on down the line for yourselves as business owners or directors, and also for your employees, and treat your employees as well with that same mindset, that they're mindset is an asset of the business. And by promoting that good health and well-being, you're going to get positivity into the business, and ultimately positivity will flow out of the business as well in the products and the services that you are promoting and selling. So that brings my video to an end then. Those 6 lessons, I would say, were the key ones that I learned on my 3-year business journey, albeit my businesses didn't go the way that I wanted to. So potentially my lessons seem a little bit harsher maybe than others because of the journey that we went on. It would have been interesting to have done this video had the businesses have carried on and were still in existence today and were flourishing, how my lessons would look with sort of 8.5 years down the line. I'm sure that it would be very different. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. I do hope that these videos are useful for you if you're on your journey of setting up a business, or if you're on your journey of having a side hustle alongside a paid employment, because I've been there, I've done both. I've done both aspects. So, I've got a lot of knowledge and advice to share through these videos. And I'm sticking to my routine now of having a weekly vlog, which will come live at 6:30 on a Sunday night. So do keep an eye out on the channel. If you do like this type of content and you've enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, because that does really help the channel out. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do consider doing so. And I'll see you all again soon in the next video, and take care. Thanks for watching.